Now this is chapter 54, and I'm going to go through the chapter, breaking it down into pieces and giving you some thoughts and notes as I go. The first point, which anyone who's listened to previous installments of these expositions will know, that between chapter 50 and the end of the Qur'an is under the influence of the qaf instance of the muqaṭṭaʿāt. I refer you to my work on the muqaṭṭaʿāt, which you may find in my YouTube channel or on Qur'anite.com, or in the book The Qur'an, A Complete Revelation, which you may download free from Qur'anite.com. Now the core topics in this chapter are the impending hour, warning, former examples of destruction, and the recurrent motif, which is that the Qur'an is easy to remember or to call to mind, and yet the lament that so few, or the implied lament that so few are willing to do so. To begin, in the name of God, the Almighty, the Merciful. The hour will draw nigh, and the moon will be rent asunder. Now, traditionalists claim that they have some examples or some stories to supplant or augment, but really supplant this particular verse, which come from the hadith literature, which anyone who listens to my work knows I reject in totality. This is not caprice. I reject it because it contradicts the Qur'an. You can have one, I suppose, or the other, but you really can't have both. And the idea of presenting these things as though they were complementary parts is just deceitful and just objectively incorrect. So the traditionalists' claims have no Quranic substance. It's an extraneous literature which is injected into the mind under the banner of a religion which, frankly, is not in the Qur'an. What is being used here is the prophetic past, and if you look at the Arabic, it is true that verse 1 is in the past. However, this is a mechanism, it is a feature of the Qur'an, that it refers to future events in the past tense, and does so right across the Qur'an. And in most other cases, the traditionalist will render correctly in the future, because it's quite clear that what's being discussed is a future event. However, in this particular case, he doesn't wish to do that, and so he doesn't, because he has some other things that he prefers to the Qur'an. However, if we're going to limit ourselves to what the Qur'an says, it's quite clear from the totality of the Quranic narrative that Muhammad is expecting destruction. We don't even have to go particularly far to find an example of this. If we go above, as it were, just a few lines in the Quranic narrative, and I work on the assumption that the Qur'an is complete, correct from God, preserved and in the right order. So if we go above a little, we find at 53-57, which is towards the end of the preceding chapter, the line which reads, "The drawing near is at hand." So this is talking about something which is imminent, however, in the future. And this is the expectation of the recipient of the Qur'an, that there is a destruction, a wholesale, widespread destruction as the result of the rejection, as he clearly is expecting from his people, because the protocol, the examples, as we shall see in this chapter summarized, is of rejection of the messenger, and then the destruction of the peoples who reject. So this verse, "The hour will draw nigh, and the moon will be rent asunder," is presaging the hour, i.e. the end of time. And the traditionalists' preferred literature is fictional, and I regard it as such, and actually distracts from, and has succeeded in operating as a gatekeeper against any, well, not, I don't claim all, but against much genuine analysis of the Qur'an. And the Qur'an does call us to consider it with care, and that's what we're focusing on here. Verse 2, "But if they see a proof, they turn away and say, 'Persistent sorcery,' and they reject and follow their vain desires." The point is here that no proof will satisfy these people. It's not that they have seen the proof of the moon being rent asunder. It is that no matter what proof they see, I mean, we have proof enough in ourselves, in the heavens and in the earth, in ourselves and in the horizon. We are surrounded by proof. We ourselves are proof. Our being is proof. So the point is, again, that no proof will satisfy such people. To continue. But every matter is settled. So each thing has its own point of decision. And the point being here is that God is above all things. Verse 4. And there has come to them among reports that wherein is a deterrence, far-reaching wisdom, but the warnings avail not. So turn thou from them. Now, again, this is the model. It is a warning, generally speaking, rejection, and then the one who delivers that warning is to turn away and wait for God's destruction. As I've mentioned in other talks, there is the concept of al-sujud as used in the Qur'an, and I refer you to my notes in my book, The Qur'an, A Complete Revelation. The al-sujud is the time of night vigil, and this is a time where I firmly believe that the Qur'an requires us to warn by means of the Qur'an, and I think by means specifically of chapters 50 through to 114, to warn and to use Christian parlance to deliver our souls to the world. And this is the model. And then people are to make their determinations regarding God, and believers are to make their determinations regarding those who have heard the word of the Lord. However, when people have rejected, the protocol is, it's not accusation, it's not to engage in name calling or recrimination, and it's certainly not persecution of any kind, as we see practiced by those who are proponents of Sharia law, where they seem to feel that it behooves them to impose this law upon people who have absolutely no interest in it. This is not the model. This is not the Quranic model in any case. The Quranic model is to turn from people in that case. There are occasions where the believers are called to fight, but it's certainly not in the creation of a caliphate. You don't find the word caliphate in the Quran. It doesn't occur. And any concept of a law that should be imposed upon anybody is also not found in the Quran. It doesn't occur. All of this comes from the hadith literature, and it's a totally different creature. There are times when fighting is incumbent upon believers, and actually the only case in which we have an example of believers fighting an unprovoked war is against those believers, people who accept the Quran, who claim faith, who continue to practice usury. So harb is war. This is a declaration of war. There are cases where believers are required to assist and help other believers to escape tyranny, and you are required to fight in self-defense. But the preemptive, active construction of a caliphate or caliphate in the modern sense is completely absent from the Quran. Doesn't exist. We are to warn, and when rejected, we turn from them. They've had their warning, walk away. To continue, the day the caller calls to a thing beyond experience, their eyes humbled, they will come forth from the graves like scattered locusts, hastening towards the caller. Those who spurn guidance while claiming virtue will say, this is a difficult day. Now the Arabic is al-kafirun, and I refer you to my notes in my book if you want the evidence why this is the Quranic value for al-kafirun. The point here is that these are people who claim to believe. The traditionalist renders al-kafirun as the rejectors, the deniers, the infidels, and thereby he means people who reject or deny or do not wish to embrace the religion that he has constructed. This is not the Quranic value. And it's very easily demonstrated on a pan-textual basis. You can see that it isn't. But I refer you to my notes. If you read the footnotes to the beginning of Al-Baqarah, the second chapter, you'll get all of that. To continue. Now we're in verse 9, and what follows now are 5 communities which were destroyed. These are also archetypes, as we'll discuss as we go. So, just to give you some context, the Prophet, the Messenger, is operating under this protocol of warning and turning away from those who turn away from that warning. And this is substantiating, strengthening that position. And we have now 5, as I say, examples. So verse 9, the people of Nuh rejected before them. They rejected our servant and said, one possessed, and he was driven away. And he called to his Lord, I am defeated, so help thou. Then opened we the gates of the sky with pouring water, and caused the earth to gush forth in springs, and the waters met for a determined purpose. So this is, in summary, the protocol. As we shall see, this repeats. Verse 13, and we carried him upon that of boards and nails. This is a reference, obviously, to the ark, to the ship upon which they were carried. And it continues, that sailed before our eyes as a reward for him who was rejected. The point here, and it repeats as we go through, is that the righteous, the warners, those who, and by righteous, this is not some sort of intellectual assent. It's not simply saying, oh yes, I believe the Qur'an. Many people say they believe all kinds of things, but you believe what you do. Words, how much they mean. The Qur'an says obedience is known. And what that means is your actions will tell you whether you're obeying or not. So it's not to do with what one claims, or it's to do with what one does. And what Nuh did was he obeyed. And he obeyed what God had told him to do. And what we find is that he was carried upon that of boards and nails that sailed before our eyes as a reward for him who was rejected. This is the model. It is usually to be rejected, and the point I'm making, perhaps belaboring, is that Muhammad was understood his revelation according to the revelation in that way, and this was what he was expecting. We see later in this sequence of the Qaf series or range, when we get to chapter 110, An-Nasr, that God had mercy and the hour was stayed. But this was an act of God's mercy. And there are other examples of this. If we look at the example of Yunus or Jonah, the people of Nineveh, the Qur'an does not use the word Nineveh, incidentally, but to use the Old Testament presentation, the people of Nineveh accepted. And so there was a moratorium until the day of judgment. They were not destroyed. 15. And we have left it as a proof. And it refers here to that upon which Nuh was carried, the ark, the boat, the ship. If you haven't done so, I refer you to the work of Ron Wyatt, that's W-Y-A-T-T, who was a Christian explorer, geologist, and did a lot of work, some of it good, some of it perhaps not so good. However, do look him up, and there are other positions on this, but I think he's got something certainly worth looking at. Now, I want to look briefly at what the characteristic sin of the people of Nuh was. And their characteristic sin was fundamentally idolatry, according to my understanding of the Qur'an. We see at 21:77, it says, and we helped him against the people who repudiated our proofs. They were an evil people, and this relates to the people of Nuh. And we read at 71:23, you are not to leave your gods, you are not to leave Wad, or Suwa, or Yahuth, or Ya'uq, and Nasr. So these were gods of these people. So that was their characteristic sin, their characteristic evil. We continue, verse 16. then how were my punishments and my warnings? And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? Now this refrain occurs 4 times in slight variations as we go through the chapter to drive home the key point. How were God's punishments and his warnings? Actually, they were just like this. They were just like what Muhammad was doing at that time. This is the point. And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? The Qur'an offers us a protocol. It's offering us a blueprint for overthrowing tyranny. This is how it works. And all one has to do is read it and disengage the whole religion thing, which is a nonsense, to see what it's saying. I mean, if you came to the Qur'an and brand Islam had never existed and you just read this book, which fundamentally what I did, on its own, and took it at its own assessment of itself, you would say this is a manifesto, this is a handbook for overthrowing tyranny. I mean, it's quite a lot of things, but that's one of the things that it has within it. And this is not some abstruse or obscure interpretation. Read any translation you like with this in mind, and you'll see it runs through it like Brighton through Brighton Rock. It's in the DNA of the Qur'an. You cannot read the Qur'an without this. And yet this is the bait and switch procedure which the mullahs, who are really fundamentally, they're operating on behalf of the system. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I've never heard a mullah ever talk about this, not ever. And I don't know how you could miss it, because it's like trying to talk about, being a salad chef without using the word salad. It's just so implicitly fundamental to this message that it's quite stunning that it's possible to read the Qur'an and not see it. But once you have seen it, you can't unsee it. But this is the model. Now we go to the next example, and this starts at verse 18. Ad rejected. Now, the messenger for the people of Ad was Hud, and their sin, their characteristic sin, was overweening arrogance and pride. I'll give you an example. It says at 26, 128 through 130, build you a proof on every prominence, amusing yourselves, and take you constructions that you might be eternal, and when you lay you hold as tyrants. So these were people who were puffed up in their own constructions, their own sense of themselves, and excessive in war, excessive in battle. These were tyrants. This is the characteristic overarching sin that we find among the people of Hud in the community of Ad. 18. Ad rejected. Then how were my punishment and my warnings? We sent upon them a violent wind in a day of enduring calamity, removing men like roots of uprooted date palms. Then how were my punishment and my warnings? And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? Again, it's driving home this point. Will you take this to heart? Can you get this point? I don't know how more emphatic it can be, but this is the point that it is making. 23. Thamud repudiated the warnings. So now we have the third instance, the third community, and Thamud, their messenger, was Salih, and their characteristic sin was abuse of God's creation, specifically animals, as we shall see as we read through. And they said, 24, and they said, is it alone mortal from among us we are to follow? Then should we be in error and insanity. Has the remembrance been given to him from among us? So this is a sort of arrogant dismissal. The subtext here is surely, if anyone was to receive a message, if anyone was to do any warning, it would be us. We are clearly the superior people here. To continue, the truth is, he is an insolent teller of lies. So this is their accusation against their warner. 26. They will come to know on the morrow who is the insolent teller of lies. Now I'll just pause here to say that these destructions, these examples of destruction are they're real, but they're also figures. They're figures of what I personally believe, and I think we can see through the Qur'an, is clearly the case of the complete destruction of the world when at the end of time, and of the day of judgment. They are small-scale prefigurings of a universal experience. They are themselves warnings. To continue, 27. We are sending the she-camel as a means of denial for them. So wait thou for them, and be thou patient, and inform thou that the water is a division between them. Each drink is in turn. So what obviously was happening here was that this was the test. This was the test case. And the camel had access to the watering hole, and these people abused a natural right that the animal had to water. And not only did they do that, as we shall see, they murdered this animal in a very cruel way. 27. And we are sending the she-camel as a means of denial for them. So wait thou for them, and be thou patient. A quick aside here is, this is the model. When you warn, there's a high patience component to it, as we shall see with all of those people who warned. 28. And inform thou them that the water is a division between them. Each drink is in turn. Then they called their companion, and he took over and did brutally slaughter. If you look at 26:157 and look at the notes there, you'll see why it is brutally slaughter. And I'm indebted to Muhammad Asad for this insight. It's not just that they hamstrung or they killed this animal, or he killed it, but he did so in a particularly cruel way. They were tempting God by their abuse and misuse of this animal which had been given them. Actually, men are the custodians of God's creation, and they were abusing that position. 30. Then how were my punishment and my warnings? And now we're going to find out. Verse 31. We sent upon them one blast, and they became like the dry stalks of the fence maker. And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? Again, the model is the warning, the rejection, and then the complete destruction. This isn't a military operation. This is invoking the punishments of God according to a very clear template. I call it the God protocol. This is the protocol. It's the program. If this, then this, then this, then this. It's just click, click, click. That's how it's done. It's not done by screaming and shouting at the elite, or voting, or overthrowing the Federal Reserve Bank. No, there's a very specific way of doing this. We move on to the next people. The people of Lut, verse 33, repudiated the warnings. Now these are the Sodom and Gomorrah. The Qur'an, to be fair, does not use either of those terms. However, in popular understanding, this is what's being referred to here. And the characteristic sin of the people of Lut was male homosexuality. I refer you to my video and article on homosexuality in the Qur'an for a more nuanced discussion of this particular subject. But suffice it to say here that claims are made today that it was only for the aggressive assault of homosexual nature that the people of Lut were destroyed. But this claim, and this type of claim, assumes that heterosexual and homosexual habits and proclivities are essentially comparable. But they're not. Homosexuality is excessive in nature, and needs to impose itself on the broader world, as we see today. Look around you. I mean, just see what's happened in the last 40 years. And the reason it needs to do this is because homosexuality is essentially sterile. They don't reproduce, so that they need your sons. I advise you to look up Carl Whitman's 1970 article, which is called Refugees from America, a Gay Manifesto. If you don't believe me, have a peruse of that and see how you feel about how, because the understanding today is that homosexuals and heterosexuals, there's an equivalence between them, and that's not the case, not in terms of activities, of habits, of diseases, and of their predatory nature. And I'm not saying for a second that heterosexuals are not predatory in some cases. However, homosexuals are predatory by definition because they don't reproduce. I'll also quickly say at this point that heterosexual fornication is a sin according to the Qur'an. However, that's not what's being discussed here. And I'm making the point that it was precisely for homosexuality that the people of Lut were destroyed, according to the Qur'an. If you don't like it, take it up with the Qur'an. 33. So the people of Lut repudiated the warnings. We sent upon them a hurricane, saved the house of Lut. We delivered them at dawn through grace from us. Thus do we reward him who is grateful. And again, grateful isn't just sitting there saying thank you very much. Grateful is responding. And this is what all of these men did. They responded to their respective missions, which was to warn the people of their times. 36. And he had warned them of our might, but they disputed the warnings. Is this not clear? This isn't an arbitrary statement. He had warned them of our might, but they disputed the warnings. Again, this is the mechanism. 37. And they had sought to lure him away from his guests. So we blinded their eyes. Taste my punishment and my warnings. 38. And an abiding punishment befell them in the early morning. Taste my punishment and my warnings. And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? Again, this is the mechanism. It's telling you all you have to do is look. It's very clear. Now we move on to the fifth and final community, which begins at verse 41. And warnings came to the house of Fir'aun. Now, I'd just like to say there's no real evidence that the children of Israel were ever in Egypt. The word Fir'aun, nowhere does it say the Pharaoh, even in the Hebrew, and I've been through the Hebrew. Nowhere does it say the, ha Fir'aun. No, it doesn't say that. It uses the word Pharaoh, but it's used as it would use the word Yaakov or Avram. It's a proper name. It's a name, just like Yusuf. And the Qur'an treats this person exactly the same. And in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, it says, even in the English translation, Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It never says the Pharaoh of Egypt. It uses the name as a proper name. The Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, from my investigations, are somewhat bemused at the idea that they had pharaohs because their understanding was that they had kings. This is another subject, and there is an article which outlines some of the key points of this at the end of my book in the appendix section, which you may download for free from Qur'anite.com. However, suffice it to say that Fir'aun existed according to the Qur'an, and it's his story that we're really interested in here, rather than the specific geography and the time in which this took place. So, according to the Qur'an, the characteristic sin of the house of Fir'aun was really twofold. Firstly, it was sorcery. And by sorcery, I mean blinding the eyes to reality by means of falsehood in order to gain purchase over the minds or mind of somebody else. That was the modus operandi of his system. And the second part of the characteristic sin of the people of Fir'aun was economic oppression and slavery. So these are two things that really characterized this presentation in the Quran and also in the Tanakh, in the Torah. So verse 42 reads, "They repudiated our proofs every one, and we seized them with a seizing of one mighty, omnipotent." So there you are. They repudiated, they rejected, and then this thing happened. It's just saying the same thing over and over again, actually 5 complete times, and giving us examples with communities which had very characteristic sins. 43. Are your atheists better than those? I mean, as a rhetorical question, when you sit back and think about it, are your atheists better than those? Are they? I think any sober analysis of the world society today would have to conclude that the dominant culture comprises actually all of the characteristics that we've just seen listed. If you look objectively at the world scenario today, it encompasses all of these things. It is a system of economic oppression and slavery based upon sorcery. And when I say sorcery, I mean look at the television. Well, don't look at the television, but television, media, all of this stuff. This is sorcery by any definition. Homosexuality is not only allowed, it's not only tolerated, it's now promoted, and they're going toward pedophilia. And if you don't believe that, I'm sorry that you don't get it, but that's where it's going. And they're going to make you a criminal. And we all know very decent, very nice homosexuals that we've come across in our lives, and we have this understanding that they're just very nice people, etc., rammed down our throats by television and so on. But if you look at the statistics of the amount of partners, just for example, that the average homosexual has, you'd be shocked. If you really dig into and a lot of this research has been done by homosexuals themselves. Anyway, suffice it to say that this is now an article of faith. It's an article, you have to believe that homosexuality is not only permissible or in some ways something you could put up with, but it's actually almost a virtue in this society. So whatever your view on this, please don't write to me and argue about this with me, because I haven't got time for it. And as I say, if you want to know my thoughts on it, I do have an article on homosexuality in the Qur'an, which you're very welcome to read. If we go back to Thamud, their characteristic sin was the abuse of God's creation, specifically animals. I mean, if you only knew what animals are put through in this society, and this has never been done before. The factory farming methods of animals, it's horrific. It's horrific. And this is done on an industrial scale. Go back to the one previous, the people of Hud. Their sin was overweening arrogance and pride, building tall buildings and thinking that these would make them eternal, and brutally destroying in war. I mean, obviously war is always war, but the kind of wars that people fight now, the idea that when the war was over, the two generals would meet somewhere on the field and the victor would receive the sword from the defeated general and they'd sit down and have tea together. Those are long over. No, we're now in, actually, to be fair, and it's the Jewish model of war, which is total destruction of even the DNA of your enemy. I mean, if you look what the New World Order did to Serbia, depleted uranium. They don't just kill the enemy. They're not even really interested in killing the enemy. They're interested in destroying the entire culture, everything, and imposing this corporate tyranny on everybody and squeezing the life out of people. So it is a tyrannical system. However, it's augmented by sorcery. And the point I'm making is all these things come together. And then let's go to the first one which we had, which was the people of Nuh. And their characteristic sin was idolatry. You're not to leave your gods, they said. You're not to leave Wad, or Surah, or Yaghuth, or Ya'uq, and Nasr. If you are not aware that the ruling elite are serving their gods, then you got some research to do, because they're highly religious, and in fact they're very moral according to their own lights. They always warn you when they're going to destroy you. What do you think the mass information, TV's for? They're serving you notice, because this is a battle for your soul. Because on the day of judgment, when you stand before God and you said, "Oh, I didn't know," they'll say, "No, you did. I called, you followed. This is the model. Silence connotes consent." And the reason why they have this system set up, it's not just because they're sucking your blood out of you financially and in every other way, but they want your soul too. The Apostle Paul had many faults, but he was right about at least one thing. He said, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, against principalities, against the rulers of darkness, against spiritual wickedness in high places." This is correct. This is fundamentally a spiritual battle. And this system wants your soul. So at the very top of this, it is idolatrous, it is satanic, it is worshipping false gods, and they have you worshipping them too. If you watch television, if you are in this system to any degree, they want you worshipping it. If you look at these big events they have at Olympics and so on, I don't watch any of them, but these big openings of things. There was a big railway line tunnel opened in Switzerland. Look that up. See what they did opening that. Everybody watching that is participating in a satanic rite. If you look around you, look at the architecture, just have a basic understanding of imagery and symbolism. People think they're not living in a religious time. This is a highly religious time. So that sin is characteristic. And my point is that these things are united now. We have a combined one world system, which fundamentally is a composite of the characteristic sins that I've just been through. And we have made the Qur'an easy for remembrance. So is there any who will remember? Now the chapter takes a turn and we're looking at this from a different perspective. So we've just had verse 43, are your atheists better than those? And we've seen that no, they're not. And in fact, they're worse and comprise all of these characteristic sins. To continue, if you have immunity in the written records, or if they say, united we stand, the host will be defeated and turn and flee, the truth is, the hour is their appointment, and the hour is more calamitous and more bitter. More calamitous and more bitter than what? More calamitous and more bitter than what has just been outlined above. Now, to go back, if you have immunity in the written records, now I refer you to something which I've outlined and meticulously summarized and noted and referenced, called the Hanging Am, which you can find notes to 2121 in my work, the Qur'an, a Complete Revelation, which you may download free, as I often say, from Qur'anite.com. Suffice it to say at this point that this is the way that the Qur'an presents arguments and answers them. This is something which has not been understood by the traditionalist because he has imported his understandings from other places rather than doing what the Qur'an tells him to do, which is to consider the Qur'an with care. What does this mean? If you have immunity in the written records, now in the Arabic it's Zubur, and given Quranic usage, my understanding is that this denotes an objective truth, i.e. a written account of men's deeds, or the functioning of God's creation, or a true account given by God, which you might find in the old, in previous scriptures, where true accounts still exist. So Satanists and occultists often truly believe that they have safety. They don't become occultists and Satanists because they think they're going to go, have a terrible time and go to hell forever. They don't think that. They think that the shaitan that they serve is going to protect them. But he isn't. I called, you followed. I think it also may indicate those who think that mere scripture will save them. And mere scripture won't save you. Obedience is known. At the second point, at 44, it says, or if they say, united we stand, the host will be defeated and turn and flee. So if this is the claim, i.e. we can win militarily against those who warn of the judgments of God, and here comes the answer at 46. The truth is, the hour is their appointment, and the hour is more calamitous and more bitter. There's no escape. There's no escape for the New World Order. There's no escape for the elite. I don't care how much military hardware they've got. You can increase the US military budget 100 times. It won't make any difference. The truth is, the hour is their appointment, and the hour is more calamitous and more bitter. 47. The evildoers are in error and insanity. The day they are dragged into the fire upon their faces, taste the touch of burning. We created everything in measure, and our command is only one. In the twinkling of an eye. Ellipsis, and it will come to pass. To continue. And we have destroyed your like, so is there any who will remember? Now, there's no involved eschatology as per Revelations or the Hadith nonsense in the Qur'an. It's not there. The Qur'an is clear. The hour comes without warning and suddenly. And Muhammad, as we find in the Qur'an, had no idea when it was coming. He's not the character that we read of in the Hadith. He's a completely different personality. The recipient of the Qur'an does not have such knowledge. There are no saviors in the Qur'an, no messiahs. I mean, the Qur'an does use the word Masih, but this is not Messiah in the sense that the Christian uses the term, or actually in the sense that the Jews use the term. It just means anointed for a particular task. And there are many messiahs in the Christian Bible, or in the Jewish Bible, rather. And what they've done is imported an understanding of this word from their extraneous literature, i.e. the Talmud and various other things, and applied it in a very specific way in order to achieve particular goals. In the Qur'an, there is no Mahdi. The term does not exist. So there's no rightly guided one that's going to come and sort all this out. It doesn't exist. What we do have is a protocol which has just been outlined. It's repeated 5 times in summary, and the Qur'an expounds and expands upon this hugely. And that is what is laid out here to warn, be rejected, God destroys. That's the model. 51 says, and we have destroyed your like. We've destroyed people just like you. So is there any who will remember? 52. And everything they did is in the written records, and everything small and great is written down. We know from other chapters, in fact within this series between 50 and 114, that there are witnesses who keep a record of everything that happens. So God's judgment is true. There is no escaping this. It doesn't matter what kind of particular deal you think you have with God from a racial point of view. Perhaps you were born Jewish, or you think that you have some special forgiveness going on with God because you believe in a particular way, something to do with Jesus. No, this is not, according to the Qur'an, this is not true. There is no intercession. There's no preference. There's no removal of righteous, real judgment, according to the Qur'an. 54. Those of prudent fear will be among gardens and rivers, in a seat of truth, before an omnipotent sovereign. So what is prudent fear? In Arabic, taqwa. We have a definition at chapter 2, 3 through 4, which reads, those who believe in the unseen and uphold the duty, i.e. they do what they should do, they do their duty, and spend of what we provide them, and those who believe in what is sent down to thee and what was sent down before thee, and of the hereafter are certain. There isn't one law that we find in the Qur'an, that God gave people different laws so that he could see who would be more righteous. I'm not going to say that the Torah is an incorrect law. I don't believe that. I do think the Torah has been corrupted. However, if one is to follow the 613 mitzvot, and that is an expression of taqwa, and I can't see any Quranic basis to criticize that. But God judges righteously. If a Jew has taqwa, as far as I'm concerned, he's a brother. And anyone who has taqwa, it's not just a feeling, it's what you do. Faith and works. You believe in God and the last day, and you do good deeds. That's it. It's knowing that God is seeing, that it's all written down, that you are responsible for your actions. And we all are, and God's judgment is true and it's righteous and it's coming. And that is the underlying message of this entire chapter.